Sean Diddy Combs.
Allegations of abuse against Sean Diddy Combs.
Sean Combs was running a criminal enterprise.
Sean Combs led and participated in a racketeering conspiracy.
Mr. CIA spy who detects lies. Is that an authentic apology and sincere, or a master manipulator trying to deceive us again?
I would actually say it's a third option.
When you deal with someone like P. Diddy and you've got the most powerful billionaires in the world who are surrounding you, I mean, that's insurmountable when it comes to not only shame, but terror.
If you were a good person at heart, it doesn't matter how wealthy you are, how powerful you are, you would tell them, no way in hell. No way in hell. How did so many women get trapped, manipulated, and abused by Diddy? And will his web of influence, fame, and money still control the outcome and get him off scot-free? Now, here to answer that is ex-CIA spy Andrew Bustamante, the master at deception, lies, and influence, and the renowned defense attorney to John Wayne Gacy, one of the most prolific serial killers ever to have lived. Karen Conti is here, so welcome, guys.
Excited to be here, Lisa.
There have been new allegations that the thousands of bottles of lube found may actually have been laced with the date rape drug GHB. Now, Andrew, that sickens me more than you can imagine, because I have no idea how I would have even known if I was put in that same position. So how on earth did that sort of thing even happen? And why was it such an unfortunately effective, quote unquote, MO for Diddy for decades?
So you have to understand that there are a great deal of drugs out there that we aren't even aware of. Drugs that are made for pharmaceutical purposes, yes, but also drugs that are made for nefarious purposes, that have the ability to erase memory, make your body go numb, make you lose conscious thinking, block receptors in your neural pathways. And the date rape drug is essentially just a catch term for any drug that has those kinds of capabilities. And when you talk about putting a compound like that into a sexual lubricant, now you're putting that compound into parts of the body that have a high absorption rate, just like under your tongue or your gums, the vaginal opening, the anal opening. These are areas that have a high absorption rate for a drug, which makes it not just more potent, but also faster acting. It's a terrible thing. I agree, Lisa, but we have to understand that these are out there, they're in circulation, and as the world becomes more globalized and as we are more and more interconnected, it means that people have more and more access to drugs like this.
Now, the one thing that you just said that I'd really like to touch on is I've heard that this type of drug can actually cause amnesia. Some people are saying, if that actually happened, why didn't people come forward immediately? So there's people that are like, if it was true, they would have come forward immediately, but they're just coming forward now because of the wealth and the name and the fame around it. But if what Andrew's saying is accurate, that if there was a date rape drug in the lube and it causes amnesia, then that could be the reason why people didn't come forward, because they didn't remember what happened. As a defense attorney, how would you see Diddy's argument going in that scenario? And then take the prosecutor's side. How would you argue that point?
Well, first, I think we need to say that Diddy, if these allegations are true, knows how to pick his victims. And not all of the victims, I'm not saying that, but many of them, maybe they took drugs that night, maybe they had alcohol in addition to all these things. And I do know that women, when they have this kind of thing happen to them, date rape, I've handled these cases, feel very embarrassed. At first, they feel like maybe I just overindulged. Maybe I couldn't handle my vodka or whatever. And so they feel embarrassed. They feel like they are responsible for what happened to them if they remember any of it. And I do think that women, if they don't remember everything that happens that night, they can feel it the next day. And they know something bad happened, but they're not quite sure. Diddy videotaped everything. He videotaped his business transactions, any interactions with people at the workplace. And now we understand probably some of these sex orgies or whatever you want to call them. So I think when you add all those things together, that makes a case very difficult because the prosecutor has to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that this person did this against her will. And a lot of prosecutors, for one reason or another, don't like to take these cases because there is still a problem with jurors being skeptical. Why were you at that party? Why were you wearing what you were wearing? What did you want from him? Are you suing him? And that's the reason that you're bringing these charges. And I think that unfortunately becomes the dynamic whereby the prosecutors don't want to bring these cases. P. Diddy defending? I don't know how he's going to defend it when it's on videotape. And I don't know how he's going to defend it when the person is drugged out of their mind and under the age of consent. So I think if those videotapes come out and we see them and the prosecutors have them from the raids on the house, I think that's going to be really airtight evidence.
Now, Karen brings up a number of really powerful points there, Lisa, and I just want to pick on a couple of them, right? So first, she talks about how much effort had to go into picking the victims. That's not something to be overlooked. Keep in mind that part of what Diddy is facing is racketeering charges. Racketeering means an organized effort to carry out illicit activity for profit. That means he's not operating alone. We talk about having a date rape drug put into lube. That is not an easy process. Too much of that drug could cause somebody a heart attack. Not enough of that drug means it doesn't give you the desired outcome. So now you're talking about some sort of pharmacology, possibly an American pharmacist, possibly a foreign pharmacist, helping to actually make the right combination to put it into a lubricant, and then to put that lubricant into a delivery vehicle, and then to transport that delivery vehicle from place to place, right? Like, these are all compounding charges that it's a big part of why the Fed is so interested in pursuing this, because racketeering charges, sexual abuse, human trafficking, sex trafficking, these are big ticket items for any kind of district attorney or major American attorney.
Oh, okay, so thank you for breaking that down. I'd like to actually move on to the video. So the video, right? The CCTV camera footage that came out a few months ago, where you see Diddy just beating the crap out of Cassie. In seeing this video, the question I have, and this may just be a simple question, but again, I'm just gonna ask, how the hell has this video been hidden for so damn long?
Well, from what I understand, there was a payoff to the people in the hotel. I don't know if that's true, but how would I ever doubt that? You know, once this kind of thing happens, there's a whole cadre of people who come in and do the protection, do the fixing, if you will. And people are offered money, and people are maybe even threatened a little bit. Why weren't you watching this camera? And you were supposed to be a security guard. And why didn't you prevent this? And you're going to be in trouble if you release this, and on and on. And only now do we see this horror show. And I really think that this was the beginning of the end for Sean Combs.
Yeah, I would also like to add to that, Lisa, because again, I'm not usually the bearer of good news, and that's certainly the case with this as well. There's an entire industry out there for reputational protection, and that industry is full of my peers from FBI, peers from Secret Service, peers from CIA. The Secret Service itself that protects the president, in essence, is the reputational protection agency for the president. So it's very common when you have celebrities stay in an area where there's a closed circuit television, where it's arranged before the reservations are ever made, that all of the video files, all of the recordings, as long as nothing damaging to the hotel occurs over the next 24 hours, this is built into the contract that you will give us the footage of all of your closed circuit TVs. Because we're protecting intellectual property, we're protecting sensitive sources and methods, we're protecting any number of things. And if you're a manager of a Hilton or a manager of a Four Seasons hotel, what are you going to say? You're going to say, you're going to pay me $100,000, $50,000, $75,000 for 10 gigabytes of video that I have no use for? Absolutely, I'll build that into the contract. They don't know there's any criminal intent behind it. For all they know, it's just basic reputation management. Nobody wants an accidental picture of a naked Paris Hilton walking across the hallway when she's, moving from room to room, when they've rented the entire, executive level of the Four Seasons or the Mandarin Oriental. So they just buy the footage, right? It's not until much later that we realize in a case like this that there may have also been criminal activity. And then the question becomes, is the hotel liable for any of that criminal activity or not? They didn't know it was happening. They didn't review the video for themselves, right? They were under contractual obligation to basically just acknowledge, right? And just like whenever you see a room that's been destroyed, there's a surcharge on cleaning the room that was destroyed. As long as there's no, dead body in there, essentially there's somebody to clean it up.
Wow, I had no freaking idea. That makes actually a lot more sense. So Karen, do the hotel have any liability, or is that part of the contract? They can just kind of wipe their hands with it and be like, no, it wasn't on me. Because as we're talking, as we're going through this and really understanding how people can be silenced and women can be manipulated so severely, I'm really grasping at how this happens. So with something like this, understand they probably did a contract beforehand. Is that an excuse for the hotel to wash their hands with it? And is there a defense there?
I don't think there's anything criminal about a hotel, entering into a contract like this. I do know that hotels like the Peninsula, for instance, have very strict rules about the maids, taking the garbage out because they have a lot of celebrities, at least in Chicago, New York, staying at the Peninsula, and they don't want someone selling, something from Brad Pitt. So I don't think there's anything wrong with making these deals. However, my guess is there's going to be some legislator in one of our 50 states who's going to say, hey, you know what? If you have a public accommodation, like a train station, like a hotel, like a major restaurant, and you have cameras, you can't do that. Can't enter into agreement. Even if it's for privacy purposes, those things are there for a reason. And if there's a selective culling out of these videos, that is going to be used potentially for criminal purposes. Again, it doesn't have to be a criminal issue. It could just be a privacy issue, the Paris Hilton example. But I think that maybe someone's going to try to pass some laws on this, that to hide a video might be something that crosses the line of illegality.
And this is it's such a hot button issue, Lisa, because we are a country based on individual privacy and the right to privacy, right? But what's interesting is we want to define what we determine to be private. We don't want someone else to define it for us. So now the idea that, you're checking in to a hotel could be captured and ciphered, and people could use it to determine your location and your time, and they could hack into the computer system and get your credit card number because they know exactly when you're in the hotel at the check-in desk, handing your visa over because of the timestamp in the upper corner of the CCTV camera. There will be some people who argue that that's public domain because it's a public accommodation. There will be other people who argue, no, that is privacy data because it is private user data, private information. It wasn't like you intended to check in at that time to make it a matter of public record. You chose a hotel, you engaged in a private contract by booking with that hotel, et cetera, et cetera. So this is just one of many examples of how privacy data comes to the forefront of our existence as Americans and Westerners.
And the idea is that, you don't tell people that there's a celebrity up in room 102. And, those kinds of things, there are lawsuits all the time. And Cassie perhaps could have sued the hotel saying, you made a deal with this guy. Maybe there would have to be an allegation that they knew he was violent. They knew that he was capable of doing these things. And had he not cut this deal, if that's the case, then the security would have maybe prevented this from happening, or at least ameliorated the results of it. So again, hotels are going to probably be much more cognizant of their civil and their criminal liability going forward.
There is a rumor, and I don't know if it's true, but there's just a bit too much coincidence that Diddy came out and, pronounced his innocence. I'm innocent, you'll see. And then this video gets leaked. So he puts out this post and it's called Enough is Enough. And he says, for the last couple of weeks, I've sat silently and watched people try to assassinate my character, destroy my reputation and my legacy. Sickening allegations have been made against me by individuals looking for a quick payday. Let me be absolutely clear. I did not do any of the awful things being alleged. I will fight for my name, my family, and for the truth. That was released on December 6th, 2023. And then the video of Cassie being beaten was released on May 17th. So there was a couple of months gap between him saying, watch, I'm going to show that I'm innocent, to then this video coming out. So firstly, how much does that hurt his credibility, Karen, if he chooses to take the stand? Because he's clearly made this big, bold statement that I'm innocent, and then a video completely negates that. And then how much does that put him in a position just in the public eye where now people just don't believe anything he says?
Well, First of all, I think he'll never take the stand. There are way too many allegations, way too many things that he could really mess up with, and it would really harm his case and even increase his sentencing, because if he testifies, his sentence can be increased if he's convicted under the federal laws. But I think it brings up something interested that I'm interested in. When I see and represent people who maybe aren't as extreme as John Wayne Gacy or P. Diddy, I'm amazed by the idea that I think they're probably a narcissist or have a lot of narcissistic tendencies. And because of the adulation and because of the crowds of people who clap no matter what you do, no matter how bad you are, no matter how many lies you tell, no matter how badly you treat people around you, everyone continues to clap for you. And then you start getting this feeling of being entitled. And then you start changing your idea of what your reality is. Hey, throwing a woman around is cool because I've been getting away with it. You know, drugging people and raping them and having people gang rape employees is just okay because, look, people still love me. So this adulation actually increases and enhances those narcissistic tendencies that make them cross the line here. So I don't think P. Diddy gets it, that he did something wrong or anything wrong. I don't even know that if he goes to jail and sits there for 20 years thinking about all of this, that he will ever come to grips that what he did was wrong, because in his heart, I think he thinks he was entitled to everything he did.
I completely agree with Karen. This is the problem with narcissists. They don't live in a world of objective reality. They live in a world of subjective fantasy where they don't see their own flaws. They don't understand people's reactions to them as individuals. They don't see the pain that they cause. They don't understand it. And there's different levels of narcissism, but especially as you get to the place where your narcissism is so strong that then you're able to create an echo chamber around yourself of your own celebrity, right? Now, even your closest inner circle of people are telling you you're innocent. I have to imagine that most of the people engaging Diddy on a daily basis are telling him to his face, you're right, man, you didn't do anything wrong. You're going to come out of this, good will prevail, you're just. That's what, they may not even believe it, but that's what they're going to tell him, because they've probably crossed his narcissistic tendencies in the past, and they know that if they go the wrong direction, he's going to have them beaten, or he's going to fire them, or he's going to ruin their career. And that's just the way it works. It's a dangerous and sad place for people who are on the spectrum to the point where they don't understand the reality that they live in.
I'd love to actually show the apology video, because in my opinion, this is like narcissism to its nth degree.
I was fucked up. I mean, I hit rock bottom, but I make no excuses. My behavior on that video is inexcusable. I take full responsibility for my actions in that video. I'm disgusted. I was disgusted then when I did it. I'm disgusted now. I went and I sought out professional help. I had to go into therapy and go into rehab. Had to ask God for his mercy and grace. I'm so sorry. But I'm committed to be a better man each and every day. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm truly sorry.
All right, Mr. CIA spy who detects lies. Is that an authentic apology and sincere, or a master manipulator trying to deceive us again?
I would actually say it's a third option. You can see how much effort he's putting into that apology. If you watch the micro expressions in his eyes, if you watch his eye movements, you'll see rapid movements left and right that break into long pauses where he looks off of what potentially is the right side of his screen. The right side, when you look to the right side like that, you're actually accessing your creative left hemisphere of your brain. So he is performative in that apology. He is a trained entertainer, and that apology is a form of his current entertainment. So anyone who goes back and watches that video again, at least even if you replay it, you will see exactly what I'm talking about. You'll see that when he's looking at the screen, he's got eyes that are vibrating left and right. He's processing in real time what to say next to maximize the emotive response. And then you'll see him look to the right, for longer pauses, that's him deeply accessing the next creative element that he's going to reference. I ask for forgiveness from my God. I truly am sorry. You'll see he goes into that creative space of his brain and then comes back to perform it, right? This is a great example of exactly what it looks like when you are dealing with a trained, experienced liar who's not necessarily fabricating just to fabricate. They're actually also playing a role, like a stage actor or like a musician.
When you're a narcissist and you get busted for doing something bad, you become a victim. And I interpreted a lot of the things he said here. This is the darkest time in my life. How about the life of the woman you were beating the crap out of? And if you really look at that video, if anyone wants to look at it, he could have killed her. Easily. He easily could have killed her. Any of those kicks, hitting into the wall, having something fall on her while he was doing this, easily he could have murdered her. Darkest times in your life. And then he says he's disgusted. Who's he disgusted with? Himself? I doubt it. I think he's disgusted with her for allowing this video to be aired. I mean, that's how they think. Like, she made me do this and she disgusts me. And then, of course, going to rehab, because of course this is an addiction, and but then bringing God in, of course, to show that he's a man of God and that he is a person to be trusted because of his religious beliefs. So I read into it a bunch of crap here.
As the American public who is observing this case in real time, we have an incredible opportunity because of all the video evidence that there is, that we've seen, not to mention the video evidence that we haven't seen. For those people who are courageous enough to watch the entire video of the abuse in the hotel, you will see how Diddy comes staggering out of his room. You'll see how he runs down the hallway, not like an athlete, but like somebody who is kind of dazed and confused. You'll see how Cassie doesn't fight back. All she's trying to do is like clandestinely, covertly, just extricate herself from the situation. Even when he grabs her and throws her on the ground, she curls into a protective position. She curls into the fetal position. And then as he's kicking her, he's not kicking her like a strong, trained fighter. It literally was an enraged, drunken, potentially drug-induced person carrying out some sort of abuse. It's even plausible he doesn't remember it, right? But for sure, that just a normal, neurotypical person would have a difficult time wrapping a towel around them, running down a public hallway to beat the shit out of somebody right next to the elevator, and then drag them naked, you're naked, drag them back to the room, where you then sit like a cowboy and throw glass bottles at them. Like, it is beyond the realm of what most of us can even comprehend. And it kind of goes to show, because we have that video evidence, it gives you a sense of what life must have been like in that guy's head, which is not normal life.
The other thing I want to touch on is the part, Karen, that you said that he's almost presenting himself like he is the victim. And I believe actually that feels like a mirror to what you've said in the past about John Wayne Gacy, where you said even though John killed, potentially 33 people, he considered himself the 34th victim because he was caught. So do you see that similarity where the person that is the predator turns on the victim characteristics? If you're a content creator like me, then you know how much time and energy and love goes into each episode, interview, and long-form video that you're making. But let's actually be real, homie. Editing and clipping those videos for social media can really suck up so much of your precious time and actually take you away from your business. Now that's why you've got to check out Opus Clip. Opus Clip actually streamlines your video clip content creation by turning your long-form videos into short social media ready clips automatically. Now I know you may be actually skeptical because I really was too, but we actually use it here at Women of Impact and Impact Theory to clip amazing and powerful moments from the show that save us hours of our time every single day. Now trust me, homie, you've just got to try Clip Anything by Opus Clip for yourself and see how easy it is to use. You can try it for the next few weeks for absolutely free when you click the link in the show notes.
It's absolutely instinctive with these people. I mean, the minute I challenged Gacy on some pictures that he had of some of the victims, and he called them bodies, and I said, bodies? Why are you calling them bodies? They're victims. They're men. They're human beings. Yeah, but what were they doing out at night anyway? Was what he said to me. So what he was telling me loud and clear, he's not as refined as P. Diddy on this, was that they deserved to be killed because they were out and about at night, and they just so happened to run into a psychotic serial killer. So yeah, Diddy really believes that he's the victim here. My guess is that he will always take that position, and they're so good at it because the minute they're accused of something, it's like they can make you actually feel sorry for them. Like, gosh, I have an addiction. I am a God-fearing man. This is a terrible time. I'm forced to look at this video. Oh, I feel so sorry for you, P. Diddy. Not. So I see men and women who are narcissists do this all the time. They're really, really good at it.
Yeah, the fact that he said therapy, he said rehab, and he said God, all in one sentence, to me felt like he was trying to touch on everybody's sensibilities. So if you believe in God, cool, I'm going to try and get you here. If you believe in rehab, then I'm going to try and get you here. How much of that, the language that he used, makes a difference in who he's trying to target to feel sorry for him?
No, you're exactly right. The words that you choose, especially when you are an experienced performer, are everything. You understand that words have power. They don't have power because they come from your mouth. They have power because they resonate with what people think of when they hear those words. So that's why words like rich have different effects on different people. Some people hear the word rich and it's a positive word. Some people hear the word rich and it's a negative word. Some people hear the word rich and they think of food and dessert. Some people hear the word rich and they think of, crime and criminal activity. So words have power with different people. But there are certainly certain words within each vernacular or language that carry predominantly positive emotions. Therapy, apology, right? Vulnerability, dark times. These are words, God. These are words that will resonate with people because inside our own lexicon, we use these words when we ourselves are genuinely feeling down or regretful or remorseful about our own activity.
I've heard rumors that his attorneys actually were the ones that encouraged him to do the video. What do you think about that, Karen? And was that a good idea or a bad idea?
It's not a bad idea. I mean, I think there are different kinds of lawyers. Some lawyers say, just keep low, don't say anything. It's going to be used against you. I think that people like P. Diddy have two thoughts in their head. They don't want to go to jail. But even more important is they want to maintain their empire. They want to maintain their fame. They want to maintain what they think is their reputation. So when you represent a high profile person, you've got to always be telling your client, listen, the most important thing is to walk free after this is over. It's not the most important thing to be top of your game. And you see this a lot in politicians, where politicians want to talk and they want to say things to the press because they want to keep their base, when in fact they're facing years and years in prison, and they should be focusing on staying out of prison as opposed to maintaining that fame and reputation. So he may have even asked one of his lawyers to write it for him, or one of his PR people. He has many of them, and maybe it came from that source.
Yeah, it certainly seems scripted. When you go back and you watch that apology video again, you'll see it is a nearly flawless performance of an experienced performer giving what is most likely either a rehearsed, if not scripted and rehearsed, apology within a very short period of time that happens to fit on Instagram, et cetera, right? Even the lighting and the framing of the screen is good. You can see that there is no shake in the camera because it's placed either on a table with a proper book behind it or some kind of tripod. And for anybody who's ever been in front of a camera, you know that one take is never the only take. You take as many times as you need to take to get the full experience across. So why do we believe that apology video is an organic video that was made from the bottom of his heart? If it was from the bottom of his heart, you would hear stuttering, you would hear misspoken words, you would hear garbled words, but you don't hear any of that with him.
in talking about us trying, in what the tactics he's doing and has done in order to convince us or blind us to certain things, I don't know if you guys heard the mum's post that she did about Diddy. And so I just pulled a line, and I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts about, like, do we think that there was the whole, his attorneys were behind this post? I'd love to hear your thoughts. So his mum says, sometimes the truth and a lie become so closely intertwined that it becomes terrifying to admit one part of the story, especially when that truth is outside the norm or is too complicated to believe. So, I mean, the whole post is about her defending her son, saying, look, I know he's not he's not a perfect man. None of us are. It was this really sweet, sincere effort of a mother. Like, it felt very genuine. But now that I'm just skeptical of everything you ever see about Diddy, how much of that is actually a manipulation tactic put on by the defense team to try and humanize Diddy instead of making him to be this villain that now he's looking like in culture?
I think that's part of it. But how I listened to those words, Lisa, is that maybe he has too much sex, or maybe he lives a wild life that we don't approve of, but it's not illegal. So there's a lie and there's not a lie. So he, I think, to me, I'm listening to it saying, yeah, he lived this life of strange sexual behavior, strange to most of us, right? But it's not illegal. And please be prepared to understand that. Like, I'm not proud of it as a mother, but it's not illegal. That's how I listen to that.
Yeah, one of the things that separates amateurs from professionals in the legal field, in the intelligence field, in law enforcement, is being able to understand and even empathize with the aggressor, with the criminal, with the villain. And when you can even hear in the words that are being chosen when people talk about Diddy, they talk about his tactics and his manipulation techniques, and they prescribe to him all this intent when there may not be any intent from him at all. If he is truly a deep-seated narcissist, he doesn't live in the normal world with the rest of us. All the intent to cover up and the intent to silence and the intent to manipulate is from teams of attorneys and teams of producers and teams of others, right? And maybe they're not even doing it with his consent. Maybe they just say, hey, Diddy, don't worry about that. We'll take care of it. And he's like, hey, thanks. Maybe he even goes and he's like, oh, I really fucked up the other day and I did X, Y, Z. And they're like, don't worry about it, Diddy. You just focus on the music. We'll take care of the rest, right?
And I just want to bring this to everyone's attention, and you can Google it yourself. Look at legal troubles for P. Diddy. There were murder rumors about a lot of people. There were rumors about Jamie Foxx having issues because of something that P. Diddy did. Oh.
That's news to me, actually. Can you tell me? I didn't actually see that.
Again, I'd hate to be a conspiracy theorist, but he was coming down on P. Diddy publicly, and he began to say things and cause a stir. And I don't know if you know, but he was in a coma for a long period of time and almost died. And we all knew that, but we didn't know why. And he hasn't come out quite and said that, but he has sort of said some things that allude to the idea that it might have something to do with what P. Diddy and his people did to him. And as we know, Kim Porter, at the age of 47, very healthy woman, had flu-like symptoms, and then she died suddenly right before she was supposedly going to publish a tell-all book. And look at Albie Shore, another guy who was Kim Porter's first husband, also had medical issues and was in a coma and lost his liver, had to get a liver replacement. All of these people around him, and there's like 7 or 8 of these people that all have ties to P. Diddy that ended up dead, not to mention Tupac Shakur, which there's been rumors for decades that he was the one who paid for the hit. So, but I mean, he had child support issues, he had legal entanglement issues. Remember the chaos at the concert that he planned. 9 people died. There was a shooting in New York City nightclub where J-Lo was there. There were assaulting a UCLA coach that his son was playing on the team. So if you look at all of his legal entanglements, it's not that he just did something bad now. He's been doing bad things and crossing the line for years and years and years. And the only difference is that he has people to cover for him. He has people and rich lawyers and people who are going to pay people off so he can walk free. And I think that's what differentiates the P. Diddy's from the world who do this kind of thing, antisocial, narcissist personality, from people like you and me.
And so before I came on camera and before I filmed this, I literally just sat down and said, I could have been one of those women. Like, just thinking about, I'm a young girl, I come to America, I come to LA. Like, if I got invited to a P. Diddy party and they're like, oh, do you want to come to his private party? I would have said yes. Not that I'm saying that I would have had sex with P. Diddy, but I'm just saying in a situation, the last thing I would have thought of is that the lube would have been laced. So you put this young girl who came to LA that I really did at the age of 21. I'm very susceptible to influence at the time. I may have met someone famous. Like, there's just too many scenarios where me or someone like me could have been that or ended up
and
there.
don't discount the idea that you're thin and you're small. Because I find that, you know, perpetrators really do prefer women and men who aren't going to fight back, even, you know, if they're drugged. So you add all of that. I totally agree with you that you could have been definitely targeted.
Yeah. And that's why I take this stuff really personally. Like, I take it very seriously. And then one last element actually is the shame part of it. You actually said that, Karen, is that you wake up in the next day and there's a bit of shame. It's like, oh my God, you know, what are people going to say? Was it my imagination? Did I flirt too much? And so how much of that shame do these enterprises, if you will, or Diddy and his circle use that as exactly like as part of the manipulation tactic to keep someone completely silent?
The shame is a big thing when it comes to non-celebrities. But when you deal with someone like P. Diddy, it's more than just shame. He has you on videotape. You might be a person who wants to be in business in the music industry. You might have gone there because P. Diddy promised you that you would get some recording contract or some way of promoting your career. And then you have the idea that there was probably a lot of coercion afterwards. If you say anything, this is going to be a problem. You'll never, maybe they were threatened with their lives. Maybe they were threatened with exposure to their families. Maybe they were threatened never to have a career again. So when you got all of that going on and you've got the most powerful billionaires in the world who are surrounding you, I mean, that's insurmountable when it comes to not only shame, but terror.
I want to add to that too, because there's so many things that would start to pile onto their psyche that just further kind of makes them feel like they can't come forward. And if they were to come forward, even more scary than winning the case would be all the people who now get to know that that's the girl. That's the girl who said yes when she should have said no. That's the girl who, wore the short skirt. And that idea of public embarrassment and public humiliation just further amplifies their own natural depression and anxiety.
And one more piece of this is there's a normalization of this. So it could be that there are other women in the room and there were allegations that he would have his girlfriend, his beautiful girlfriend, Kim Porter, have sex with other women and he would watch and touch himself. So, when you have other people doing this who are high profile, maybe the women too are saying, well, maybe this is normal in the industry. Maybe this is what I have to do. Not really fully understanding the level of criminality. And, I'm not saying that they want to get ahead and therefore they're going to do anything. But there's an idea that if all these people are doing this, maybe I'm the one who's, I'm being a little bit too, prudent and whatever the word is. So there's that level too.
Karen is using a perfect word, normalization. The human mind acculturates itself to adopt the dominant culture of wherever it is. That's why when you're in LA and you go to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, you feel out of place. And then you start to mimic the local culture in Baton Rouge so that you'll fit in. Well, guess what? That's what you do if you're a good person. That's what you do if you're a bad person. It's naturally ingrained in our survival instinct to mimic the culture around us. So yes, there are these young women, these young men who are trying to break into the industry, who find themselves in this situation, and they don't know what's normal or not. And Karen's exactly right. Their survival instinct is gonna tell them, I'm the one that's out of place. I need to adopt the dominant culture. But the same thing is happening to all of the people who are already celebrities. So they don't know what normal life is like. So when they show up to a party, they just expect everything's above board. So then when drunk men and drunk women start coming in and orgies take off and all this stuff starts flying, they don't think right away, this is wrong. They think the same thing that the victim's thinking. Well, this must be normal and I must be out of place. So you've got this normalization on both sides, with the nefarious actor in the middle is the only one that actually knows that what's happening right now is inappropriate.
And Diddy brought it to a new level. If you got invited to these parties, if you got invited to sit with me and do these kind of things, you are in my inner circle, and I'm a billionaire, and I'm a genius, and I'm this. And he, with all the adoration out there, with his narcissism to begin with, and all of the adoration that fueled this narcissism and made it into crossing the line of legality, he created a world where people wanted to get in there. Even the Paris Hiltons or the J-Los wanted to be in there. And you blink your eyes and you go, like, why would they need him in that regard? But he created that fantasy that was believable, and he probably even believed it.
Talk to me about the power of Hollywood. Do you think that that's number one, why it took so long to come out? Because if this has been going on since the 90s, that's insane that it took this long to come out and for us to be talking about it. And then with all of the blackmail in Hollywood, is that then even more of a compounding effect? Because now not only do you have blackmail against you, your entire circle, fame, everything you've built is at risk.
The problem is not Hollywood. The problem is money, right? And in any industry with high dollars, the legal industry, the medical industry, when it comes to television and film, when it comes to music, when it comes to art, like painted art, graphic art, you will always have the people who are addicted to the idea of opportunity. And then you will have a small group of people who actually control the opportunities. So it's all based on money. So as sad as it is to think, what we're seeing happen right now with Diddy just happened last year with the conviction of R. Kelly. And that case took 4 years to bring to fruition. And that was 20 years of sexual misconduct. Like there are people who are ambitious, who want opportunities, and they may not be willing to do anything to get there. But as they endeavor to get to the top, they're exposed to these inner worlds, these inner sanctums, and they have to ask themselves, do I play by the rules to continue to climb, or do I count myself out of the game now? Very few people think, oh, I'm going to break the system and rebuild it on my own. Instead, they feel like they have to stay in the system or exit the system and essentially leave the opportunity.
So how do you then take that idea, though, and put it into what is happening now? Because, and maybe I'm naive, so please push back, guys. I don't think money in and of itself is evil. It's the person behind it. So if you happen to have somebody that, I mean, let's just take, obviously, you defended John Wayne Gacy, Karen, and so you've obviously very candidly said, yes, he was sadistic, he was evil, he killed 33 people, you know, buried them under his house. But he didn't have the fame and power and the money that someone like Diddy does. So how do you even try to protect yourself from something that enormous?
Well, I think it's interesting to note because Gacy, in his own little domain of the world, was powerful. I mean, in his own little world in the suburbs there, he was very politically connected. He knew all the police officers. He would do benefits for them. He'd shovel people's lawns. He would throw massive parties. He was ahead of the Polish Day parade. He had his own little group of powerful people. And I will add to it, he had people who he was grooming to help him procure and help him perform some of these murders and certainly bury the bodies. So he had people around him who he had information about, who he could use that information against them. Back then in the day, being a homosexual was not a cool thing for a public official. And my guess is that he had a little dossier on some of these people and knew that if then there was ever a complaint against him, and there were many, many complaints against him by victims who actually lived, the police would deflect it and the police would give him a pass. So I think money is really important, but I also think these people are charismatic. They know how to wield power. They know how to parlay power. They know how to surround themselves with people who are going to help them. And these people have something to lose if they report the offender. I don't think we can discount the idea that there are people that these perpetrators groom. Epstein had his Ghislaine Maxwell. R. Kelly had, accountants and various people who would cover up for him and write checks to people and hide things. I mean, these people were surrounded by yes men, and the more wealthy and powerful you get, the more people you're going to have inclined to say yes to this.
And Karen used that powerful word, opportunity, Lisa. For some people, money is opportunity. For some people, fame is opportunity. For some people, power is opportunity. For some people, just getting out of their current situation is opportunity, right? We also have to acknowledge the fact that the entertainment industry has come out, especially in the last decade, as being something that it's just insanely abusive, both like whether you're talking about actors or whether you're talking about writers or whether you're talking about models or whether you're talking about musicians. It is an incredibly abusive industry that was born way back in the 60s when you would basically find any kind of talent you could and you would binge them on whatever drugs you needed to get them to take so that they could be massively productive, so that they could overcome their own natural disorders for anxiety or sleep or depression. And that's how we ended up seeing the Kurt Cobains of the world killing themselves. And that's how we saw a string of famous musicians who either died of overdoses or self-inflicted causes, because that industry is abusive. So we shouldn't be surprised that somebody like Diddy, who's been a veteran, a king in that industry, is abusive himself. And just as much as nobody wants to take any pity on Diddy, think about the abuse he must have gone through himself when he first came into that industry. So there's a cycle, a pattern that's happening here, very similar to what you see in the criminal world, very similar to what we see in the intelligence world. Flawed people create flawed people. And it's just a matter of time before one of those flawed people becomes a breakout sensation, becomes a dictator, becomes a terrorist mastermind, becomes, a mogul who can abuse the entire system around them. So it's difficult, right? But on a certain level, we can all relate to Adolf Hitler. On a certain level, we can all relate to serial killers like Gracie or Gacy. On certain levels, we can even relate to Diddy. What would we do if we were the moguls of the music industry? What would we do if we had nobody in the world that we could trust because everybody was out to get something from us? Where would we?
But I tell you what I wouldn't do. I wouldn't fill lube bottles with the rape date drug and try and, and go after 9-year-old boys. So I actually disagree with you very politely in that I can't relate to Hitler. I can't relate to these evil people, because if I was surrounded, having sold Quest Nutrition for $1 billion, I think I'm pretty good when it comes to financial means. No way in fucking hell. No way in fucking hell would I ever, if anyone came to me in any way, shape, or form to try and degrade someone around me, I would fire them on the spot. I would either sue them, I would call the police. So I think you have to have, look, I'm not saying that everyone's perfect, and I'm not saying I'm perfect, but I think you have to be a kind of person. For Diddy to go along with it, be the mastermind. I totally hear what you're saying, Andrew. Maybe he wasn't the mastermind. I don't believe that. I think he was, but I am going to be open enough to embrace that maybe it is a massive group of people that are all part of it. But I cannot let him get away with that type of reasoning of that, what would you do? Because I think that if you were a good person at heart, it doesn't matter how wealthy you are, how powerful you are, you would tell them to fuck off.
And that's what makes it difficult for people that are neurotypical to be able to relate, be able to visualize, be able to comprehend. And frankly speaking, that's also why it's so hard for normal people to predict when it will happen again. It's why it's so hard for normal people to know when they're trapped in a repeated pattern, because they can't get ahead of it, because they're stuck in their own frame of reference, thinking to themselves, surely nobody would be so villainous. Surely nobody would actually do this. Surely there's no way that this is going further than it's going, right? But for me, I have a hard time believing that somebody who is drunk and high and engaging in massive orgies, if that's where the majority of his time goes, I don't know when he's spending time thinking through the exact formula for a date rape lube. It just doesn't make sense. It makes sense that somebody else is doing it. It makes sense that maybe somebody else is doing it and he has seen the benefits of it, but that doesn't necessarily mean he has intentionally driven it in that direction. There will always be villains, always. And there will always be heroes. But the thing people need to understand is that the difference between heroes and villains is razor thin. They're both ingenuitive, they're both tenacious, they're both creative, they're both charismatic, right? There's not that big of a gap between heroes and villains. It really just bases itself on what decisions you make in a moment, right? And if you're really going to try to comprehend the mind of a manipulator or the mind of a narcissist, it's so far from your neurotypical mind, it takes effort. And if you're not going to put that effort into it, then all you're doing is you're leaving yourself at risk of being a victim of them in the future.
So do you think he potentially had, like, you know, like in a company where you have a structure, you have a CMO, a CFO, a COO. So do you almost think that he maybe had like these positions in his organization that took care of things, like a COO, so a chief operating officer of the lube, for instance? Like, is that how you think about that it was structured? Because if Diddy isn't sitting there going, make sure that you don't kill him, but make sure that you give them just enough so that I can rape them. Like, you're saying that he probably didn't do that. So who did then? And how did they get everyone's buy-off if you think of it like a business structure and a trickle down?
Now you know why the Fed is interested in this case. Now you know why there are government dollars going into investigating the sex trafficking, the human trafficking. Lisa, just think about all the people, all the money, all the logistics, all the legal paperwork, all the transportation that would go into one of those parties. You've got illegal drugs being brought in by private jets that are being carried in the purse of former musical peers, right? We know that that's how the drugs got to the party. So that means foreign drug sources were manufacturing the drug, which was then being carried in the personal carry-on of celebrities, minor celebrities, on private jets flying from foreign countries into the United States, bypassing Customs and Border Patrol, abusing FAA rules. That's just to get one of the superficial use drugs in. Not to mention whatever might have been going on with regards to any kind of lubricant that was laced with whatever. Not to mention the fact that these weren't like standalone parties; they were parties that built upon parties. So there was a whole cultivation effort. So I think your idea of a business structure is much more likely than people realize. I don't think there was a COO of lube, but I do believe that the producer who was making all the money off of Diddy, because remember, Diddy made a lot of money for other people, right? So the people whose cash cow was Diddy all had a vested interest in making sure that this guy kept doing what he does best. And you have to keep feeding the beast. And if what this beast needs is a bunch of drugs and booze and sex workers, then that's what we're going to bring him. And that does require a chief of logistics, and that requires a chief legal officer who can find a way to do it as much above board as possible. They need to have a risk management firm, a reputational protection firm like we talked about, right? The reason this is such a big deal isn't because of Diddy. It's because he's at the top of a racketeering pyramid that's going to bring huge names into jail. They're going to be convicted. There's so much money at stake here. There's so much at risk. That's why the federal government is interested in pursuing this case instead of just letting it go to the civil courts.
And one of the things from a legal standpoint that I think we should all be watching for if we're interested in this ongoing story is that the charges were against him. And usually when you see these cases brought against R. Kelly and other people, there are other people named. Why do they name the underlings? Because they want those people to flip on the big guy. And then they're going to flip because they don't want to spend their lives in jail. And they're going to say, yeah, I was the one who procured the young people. I was the one who laced the lube. I was the one who did that. But in this case, today's date, at least, there have been no other people charged. And I'm really curious about that because I'm sure the government knows who else was complicit, or at least a few of the names. So perhaps there are conversations that are going on outside the public scrutiny of people who are now cutting deals and they're going to put together a rock solid case with maybe not only the allegations that we see here, but maybe some of these other allegations when it comes to murder. And again, I don't want to say that I'm convinced beyond any doubt that he committed murder or had murders committed, but there are just way too many coincidences all the way around him to think that he didn't have anything to do with some of them. And I think we're going to see the expansion of these charges.
It's important to understand what it takes to get federal government involved, right? These are civil cases, right? The vast majority of the settlements are civil cases. The abuse is a civil case. Even the instances of sex trafficking in many ways, they might be state cases, but the federal government doesn't have a massive stake in the sex or human trafficking game. It's an underfunded area. So why would the Fed get so involved just to win a sex trafficking case? Usually when you see the federal government get involved in a case like this, it's not because they're interested in the person who's the headliner. It's because there are connections that go to other politicians. There are connections that go to foreign governments. There are connections that go into, elements that pose a national security risk. So there's actors and musicians and famous people at these parties. Is it really so hard to believe there wasn't also a senator or a congressperson that may have been at those parties at a state level or even at a federal level? Or could it be possible that there's some contracting firm, some Booz Allen Hamilton or some Raytheon executive who was there, or some foreign diplomat that was coming from Turkey or Russia? Like, you can see how it would all be connected. And now all of a sudden it's worth federal tax dollars to pursue this as a racketeering case or a sex trafficking case, because, to Karen's exact point, you get to collect all that information without leaking it to the public sector. It stays hidden in the Attorney General's office, where it builds a bigger case and a stronger case and a bigger case and a stronger case.
So is Diddy's name then just the start to trying potentially to unveil even more powerful people?
Now, my suspicion is that he is the tip of the iceberg, and that the federal government knows he's the tip of the iceberg, and they're following it through even further, especially now that precedent has been set by R. Kelly, who's in jail for 30 years for racketeering charges, right? So the federal government is always trying to find its own holes, its own moles, right? The people who are abusing the system from inside. And when I see the amount of effort that's going into Diddy from a federal point of view, that's where my attention goes. All the civil stuff is civil law 101, settling out of court, getting paid off, attorneys, strong-arming horror victims. That's been happening for decades, and frankly speaking, it's going to keep happening, right? But what's unique about this to me is the fact that federal investigators are involved, and that there's so much interest through the lens of sex trafficking, when sex trafficking isn't a national security priority.
So you mentioned earlier, Karen, about the amount of other people and the names and the people that have probably seen things, and you're surprised that there weren't more names attached to Diddy. Obviously, there's so many rumors right now of just every famous person being potentially named as having gone to one of these parties and partaken in it. So how would you even approach, let's say you're looking for somebody who may have been there, who may have been a witness, but they're just so freaking famous that they don't want to talk? How would you handle that? Are they staying silent because they don't know anything? Or are they staying silent because they don't want the earth to crumble beneath them?
I think there are a number of people with different motives. If you have somebody who may have been there who's high profile, they have two choices. They're going to do what's right and tell the truth and help victims. Maybe they were a victim themselves. But as you know, when you saw with Weinstein and you saw with a lot of these people, the press is really harsh on victims. Yeah, do you just want a payout, right? We saw that, when politicians get sued, that person just wants a payout. That person's looking for money or fame or something like that. So when you step out in front and you say that something bad happened to an icon, you are subject to a lot of scrutiny and even personal safety issues. Because people these days, they all seem to be walking around with guns. And if you are a P. Diddy freak, you might even get violent with somebody who wants to bring him down. I also think that, the idea is that if it's a J-Lo or someone like that, she wants to distance herself from him. I mean, he was the boyfriend for a while, but I'm sure she doesn't want this to come up over and over again, because it's not very flattering that you were there dating some guy who was engaging in these kinds of things. So she might just opt to say, I'm not going to get involved in this. I'm not going to stand up for anything because it's going to ruin my reputation, and I want to have a career. So
is she allowed to do that even if she was an accomplice or had been there and seen things?
Well, I mean, if the government subpoenaed her, she would have to talk and she'd have to tell the truth. Or she would have to take the Fifth Amendment to say she was complicit, and she would then exercise the right to be silent. I don't know that the government is going to go after the J-Los of the world, and I don't even know how much those people knew, but there certainly were other people who were complicit. And remember, he had this big company called Revolt, and I had friends who worked there. I mean, it was a very structured company. They sold liquids, they sold alcohol, they put on these massive parties, not just the sex parties, but real parties. It was about music, it was about production. They sold all kinds of things. It was a very lucrative and structured company. So he could have just taken that structure, used some of the people from that company, or as Andrew said, created his own little criminal company where everyone had their role in covering this stuff up.
Yeah, I've actually been to a P. Diddy party. It was not one of these private parties. It was like his 50th, so there was, hundreds and hundreds of people there. But to see the amount of powerful people that are around, to see the security, to see the buzz in the room and the air when a celebrity would walk in, again, I didn't see anything, but in just being present to that and seeing how many people were just trying to get to Diddy, like, it was insane. So to think about the power that he already holds over people that he doesn't even know, right? That's kind of like the leg up. If you think about a narcissist, it's like he's already got a massive leg up because people already idolize him. People will already do the things that he says, even if he doesn't know who they are. So that type of power can be intoxicating. But when in looking into this, there's around 3,285 people 3,825 people that came forward saying that they had some case of abuse from Diddy and his circle. And out of those, 120 were chosen, and that's who Busby is representing. But just to think about the 3,285 people, that's so many people that have seen potentially something. But to think that those people, let's say, spoke out. Apparently 55% of the people were told they weren't believed and they were just silenced. Like, there was zero follow-up. So now I think these people have taken the time, they've taken the encouragement, the energy, trying to speak up, trying not be silenced anymore. They finally speak up. They are silenced by him, his team, and now they've got nowhere to go. Again, this is rumor, potentially conspiracy theory. I'm not sure yet, but I would love to get your guys' thoughts on this. So Diddy had a business partner where he owned Ciroc and De Leon Tequila. Now, apparently, Diddy sued him and won $1 billion. This is the rumor, so I'd love to hear you. That Diddy sues his business partner and he gets $1 billion. So if Diddy breaks the morality clause in his contract, then his business partner doesn't have to pay him $1 billion. And so the rumor right now is that was why these videos came out, and it's not because of the thousands and thousands of people that were turned away for claiming that this happened. So help me understand the impact of a businessman that's fighting to not pay $1 billion and the energy he's going to bring behind that, compared to, let's say, a poor woman who's just found herself in a really unfortunate situation where she goes to the police and she tried to speak up and she's ignored. How the hell is one so much more powerful than the other?
Well, I'm going to say this again, that when these narcissists picked victims, sex abusers picked the victims who are not going to be believed. They picked people who might have drug and alcohol problems, people from impoverished families, people who are desperate, maybe people who are intoxicated when things are going on. So they know instinctively the police aren't going to listen to them. Also, Diddy has the top lawyers, in the nation. And so when those lawyers contact the police, when these people are interviewed, they start flexing their legal muscles. And sometimes the prosecutors, I will have to say this, they don't want to go up against the good lawyers of the world. They'd rather go up against a public defender and a poor person who doesn't have a good lawyer. It's not a slam dunk. I mean, tell me how Bill Cosby couldn't have been charged. 90 victims, decades of abuse. Those women went to the police in a lot of situations and the prosecutors didn't bring the charges. And I will also say some of these women have brought lawsuits. And when you bring a civil suit, the prosecutors don't want to take the case. Why? Because the first question out of the mouth of the defense lawyer is, you're making money on this. All you want is money. You don't want justice. You want money. So I think you juxtapose that dynamic with all these women, and you've got a very, very prominent businessman who is doing the extortion that P. Diddy has done his whole life, which is, if you don't do this, I'll go after you for this. So now this guy with all his lawyers is saying, all right, now let's put this to the test. There's $1 billion involved here. Let's bring these allegations out and let's make P. Diddy's, morality clause go down the drain, and I'll make him a lot of money on this. So I think those are the two things you have working for you. Again, Andrew, it's money.
It's a humbling truth that we all have to understand. If we really want to get ahead of villains, we have to understand that in America, opportunity and money rules the day. When you talk about this potential business partner who is at risk of losing $1 billion, you are a very savvy businesswoman yourself. When you're in business, you don't trust anybody. You're always trusting but verifying that the person that you're dealing with is being true and honest at the moment. But at any given moment in the future, they might change. So if somebody had worked with Diddy 20 years ago, they would have seen the behaviors that have become the Diddy of today. They would have built their insurance plan. If a reputation management company is the person who protected Diddy in 2016 when they took the video from the hotel, what kind of company do you think it was that pulled that video from that firm? Another reputation management company that was hired to get hands on that footage, right? So that's the money game. There's money to be made everywhere. There's money to be made protecting someone's reputation. There's money to be made attacking somebody's reputation. There's money to be made even when we talk about the attorneys that Karen was mentioning, prosecutors who don't want to go up against a big attorney. Why don't they want to go against a big attorney? Because prosecutors only get promoted when they win. If they don't win, their career plateaus. So would you rather pick a high profile case that you might lose to stake your career on? What is a career? Future wealth. Or would you rather take a series of low hanging fruit to make sure that you win your prosecutions, to make sure that you get your promotion? It's just the way that we're built.
Whew. All right. So in saying all of that, what do you think we can expect to unravel over the next, let's say, 6 months up until his court case? And then when he does go to court, where do you think that goes? Do you think that there's just more names that are coming, more people that are going to be guilty? Are we eventually going to see that, yes, Diddy is just the peak of the iceberg? Or do you think that everyone is just trying to bring Diddy down and then everyone's going to then try and put the entire case to bed?
I think we're going to see additional charges added to this particular set of charges and maybe additional defendants. But I also think there are going to be independent investigators. This is what we saw with R. Kelly. And so all of a sudden, prosecutors all over the country, in Chicago and New York and Minnesota, all said, hey, you know what? We've got some victims here. And again, I'm not disparaging prosecutors, but their name is made on prosecuting these kinds of people. And once you have someone who's convicted, it's a little bit easier to bring charges and get a conviction, with the idea that jurors probably know that this person has a prior record, even if it's not brought into court. So my guess is that P. Diddy just didn't do bad things in New York. It's going to be stuff in Florida. It's going to be stuff in California, and that we have prosecutors' offices locally already investigating some of these alleged crimes. So I think we're going to see more defendants, more charges, and then more charges in different states.
Yeah, I agree. The web is going to continue to grow. And I wouldn't be surprised if we saw this web transcend beyond just the entertainment industry and into other industries, financial industries, possible political industries, whether it's state politics or national politics. We'll see that transcendence. We'll see that continued growth. And again, federal prosecutors know that they have the precedent that was set by R. Kelly for bringing a well-known entertainer with lots of money to justice on sex trafficking charges. So they know that they have opportunity on their side to bring this to justice, yes, but also to unravel a much larger case here. And frankly speaking, that's good for Americans. It's good if we understand that sex trafficking and drug smuggling and racketeering can be identified, can be investigated, and can be brought to justice. It's not just a story of one man abusing thousands of women. It's a story of organizational abuse that goes beyond women to also men and children, right? So this is a big win for justice.
And I also think that it might make some of us think the following: why do we adore these people? without really examining who they are? Why didn't other celebrities who knew what was going on come forward? Are they to be blamed too? And you see people scatter. They throw away the pictures of the celebrities with P. Diddy, you see them all on social media. Why didn't people come forward? Why didn't prosecutors take the case? Why do we, just our average citizens, look up to people so much, like Michael Jackson, let's say, if you believe that he is guilty of what he was charged with? Why are we putting people on a pedestal that we should be disparaging? We should be critical of? Is it because we're not believing the victims because they're minorities? Or are the other minorities not wanting to bring another minority down? There's all those things in play. Don't think they're not, because there are. But I think we need to parse people a little bit more carefully and not believe everything they say and believe everything that they do is good, just because it's making them money.
Yeah. Oh my God, guys, thank you so much for this. Andrew Bustamante, Karen Conti, you guys are absolute phenomenal. I really appreciate you guys talking through this. I don't know how you guys deal with this all the time, by the way. Oh my God, like I'm just watching this one video of this woman getting beaten up and my heart is fucking breaking. To think what you guys do on a day-to-day is insane.
Just think about police officers, and just like from a local beat cop to an emergency room doctor to like your FBI agents. They see this stuff and worse, because they have to build a case. So they don't only see one instance of it. They have to see multiple instances of it, and they have to watch it over and over again to make sure that it meets the criteria for a proper litigation, that it's going to stand up in court, that it's going to be convincing to a jury. Like it is an incredible job that is so often underestimated when it comes to
from my perspective, I represent victims of harassment, stalking, and domestic violence, but I also represent perpetrators. So I have to get in their head to understand why they're doing this, because I feel like part of my job is to make sure they don't do it again, which good luck with that. But I'm the one saying, hey, buddy, you got a problem. Do you understand that that's wrong? And maybe you should get some help and some medicine or something, because that is just, when you have someone justifying it to you, it's almost in some ways worse.
Andrew, where can people find you?
You can find me at everydayspy.com, my homepage, or you can follow me on social media at everydayspy. And we have a very popular podcast called the Everyday Spy Podcast.
Amazing. Karen, where can people find you?
My website is KarenConti.com. My book, Killing Time with John Wayne Gacy, is on Amazon. And I do a radio show on WGN in Chicago. So you can just Google Karen Conti WGN, and all of my episodes are podcasted.
If you want to know the signs that he's a psychopath, a sociopath, or worse, a serial killer, then click here right now.
If you are dealing with a true psychopath, somebody who doesn't have empathy, they're very good at getting these women under their